Good morning. Can everyone hear us?
Paul, I can hear you.
Okay.
All right, we're all set. I got Biden's or Bernie Sanders' State of the Address. That's already loaded for you, so I got all the stuff that you need for today.
All right, man. All right, thanks.
And then just to be clear, we got Mr. Miranda is going to be online, right?
That's on the phone.
On the phone, okay.
Right.
Hey, what's up now?
Brother, what's up?
This is a groovy party, man.
Yeah,
I
brother,
can dig
like,
it.
stop. Right on.
Good morning and welcome to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. That's 855-752-4842. You can text us at that same number. Good morning to you, brother. How you doing, Carti?
Man, I am feeling good. It's starting to rain a lot. It's looking like an April type of March. What's going on?
Well, man, you want, you know.
I mean, I'm glad without the snow, but the rain is kind of a little depressing too at the same time.
Well, listen, man, what happens after, life has been put to sleep during the winter.
Right.
It's got to be revived, and it's revived by the rain.
Okay.
Bring on the rain.
Okay.
Because the rain means, lush grass and, and all those kind of things. I'm kind of a guy who always makes sure that my lawn is the best. What's the guy, man, in the old in that Halloween movie, and the guy says, "Stay off of my lawn." Well, I'm not one of those kind of guys, but But anyway, I love the green grass. But anyway, it's Wednesday, and that Nebuchadnezzar is the guy's name. But anyway, speaking of Nebuchadnezzar, Paul Schwartz kind of reminds me of Nevin Cracker. No, it doesn't. Hey, good morning and welcome to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. It's Wednesday. That means Wednesdays. With the Get the Lead Out guys, I'm happy to have them all back together. Good morning to you, Paul Schwartz, who is co-founder of Campaign for Lead-Free Water. Hey, Paul, are you worried about the rain?
No, I want the drought of this year to be pierced by that lovely sweet liquor of rain. Of spring, I'm looking for it, except for the pollen.
Yeah. Well, there's always something, but clearly we've had droughts for a long time. To get a lot of rain in March is a good sign.
Amen.
All right, good to see you again, Dr. Yana Lambrinidou. Good morning to you. How are you, Doctor?
Good morning, Earl. Very well. So good to see you. Good to be here.
It's always great to have you guys together, and the dean of them all, my good friend Robert Miranda of Fresh Water for Life. Good morning to you, Robert. How you doing, man?
Good morning, Earl. Sorry I can't be with you on the monitor there, but hey, we're linked up on the phone.
Well, hey, man, that's it, man. That's the most of it. But I guess
Yeah.
The issue of what's happening in the city of Milwaukee Public Schools is really, man, has really just grown in its magnitude. You say what, Robert?
Yes, it's really starting to
Take on a life
get
of its
the
own.
attention of, it's getting the attention of the public. And, just this past weekend, there was a very successful community assembly held by the Let's Safe Schools Committee, chaired by Dr. Payne. And the committee actually drew a full house at the Washington Park Library with parents and members of the community, and there was a great presentation. Lots of information was passed, a thorough update to all the parents who attended and community members who attended on the not only the beginnings of this whole thing and how it started, but where we currently are today. And, kudos to the work being done by the parents who are organizing this effort, of combination of parents from Golda Meir and other schools that have been impacted by the lead issue, are coming together. They're reaching out to other schools to organize even more. And they've come up with a few action items that they're going to pursue. And one of those is to call for the Milwaukee Public School Board to hold a special session on this topic because parents want to voice their concerns, and rightly so. Most community members who attended also are wanting to express concerns about the direction and how did we get to this point where we are, even after we addressed this once already about 10 years ago. And still here we are once again, finding out that even though there were actions taken 10 years ago to remedy the problem and try to resolve some of those issues, turns out that there was really no follow-through to maintain the whole atmosphere of safety in the schools. So, there's still a lot of questions that need to be resolved. And even though the Milwaukee Health Department has been transparent, and I can say that they are being as transparent as possible, they have met a lot of the demands that were placed by parents on their petition. Milwaukee Public Schools is really slow to respond. The petition has about 11 demands that they put on MPS to answer some of their demands, and so far, one demand halfway has been answered. All the others haven't, which is a real interesting matter, because MPS is supposed to be really working with parents and addressing these issues, because parents are entrusting the school system to not only educate their children, but to keep their children safe. And for MPS not to be responsive and coming forth with information for parents to disseminate among themselves is telling, and is should be alarming to a lot of us in the community.
Well, Paul, is this the way it's supposed to work? And is this the way that we're going to get the action we need? Grassroots efforts by parents organizing. I mean, it's one thing to have you guys behind the scenes doing things, but what really got them to move is parents organizing and mobilizing.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Earl. The people and people power have to kick it up a notch and hold those who are supposed to be doing the job accountable. What we don't want to see, as Robert Miranda described, is a whack-a-mole situation where you think you have something done and then it just pops right back up sometime later. One thing to say as the parents struggle for these demands to be met by Milwaukee Public Schools is that there have been, and we should give them credit for this, filters and filter stations put out on a lot of the taps. And although there's some recalibration that needs to happen, I think we've seen the data about lead in water, some kitchen sinks and some other things that, really need to be attended to. It's really important to say what's working and what the parents and the community have gotten already, and then to push them to do the rest of the job, and to make sure that when our eyes are diverted, that they're not having a party and not doing the work to maintain the progress that's been made and to address the other issues as well.
Dr. Yana, as Paul and Robert are saying and talking about, and yes, the pressure is on, the heat is on, and the responses. They shut down one of the schools, which is certainly something I could have never dreamt that they would do, but the pressure is mounting and building. You say what?
I say that, unfortunately, we are in a situation where for the vast majority of schools in our country, there are no regulations that ensure, at least for drinking water, that it is safe in relation to lead. And so this is a bit of a regulatory loophole or black hole, if you will. And we've got a decades-long history of problems discovered by parents, or parents needing to be staying on top of these issues in order for them to be resolved and for solutions to be maintained, as Robert and Paul just talked about as well.
The thought that comes to my mind, guys, is as this is bubbling to the surface, how many children were poisoned over decades? This got out, and they've already have been impacted by. It's great that you catch it now, but the fact that so many children have been damaged by this. Any thoughts?
Yeah, Earl, I can jump in here just to say really quickly that there's a long history of problems of lead in drinking water in schools. And if you look at even in the early I mean, mid 1980s and then early 2000s, we have cases of, Seattle, Washington, D.C., Montgomery County, Maryland, where testing that was in most cases pushed by parents showed the majority of schools having problems, and also many schools having lead in water exceeding 700 parts per billion, which is a ton of lead unaddressed.
855-752-4842. The Get the Lead Out Coalition is on tap. 855-752-4842 is the number. You're tuned into the Earl Ingram Show.
We've got to find a way to bring some love in here today. Picket lines and picket signs. Don't punish me with brutality. Talk to me so you can see what's going on. What's going on? Yeah, what's going on? Oh, what's going on? There's a little black spot on the sun today. It's the same old thing as yesterday. There's a black hat caught in a high tree top. There's a flagpole rack and the wind won't stop. I have stood here before inside the pouring rain, with the world turning circles running round my brain. I guess I'm always hoping that you'll end this rain, but it's my destiny to be the king of rain.
All right, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. Text us at that same number. Get the Lead Out Coalition is in full force on the Earl Ingram Show. You know, Robert, I was listening to Dr. Yana talking about how far back this damage actually goes. You know, these schools that they're focusing on, Robert and Paul and Dr. Yana. It's, I mean, Milwaukee's not the only place that has school buildings that's 100 years old. I'm sure all across this nation and big cities, they kind of face the same kind of thing. This really should be a national focus, not local. I mean, shouldn't this be a major conversation in Congress and the Senate?
Yeah, let me just jump in.
You would think it is, and it should be, no doubt. This weekend when we were doing the community assembly, one of the most shocking statistics that I received at the meeting came from a representative of the McKinnon Brown Sanctuary. I think you're familiar with
Absolutely.
them. And one of the representatives there was giving a presentation on the lead blood testing program that they conduct there. And she stated that out of the 380 children that they tested for lead blood levels, 80 to 85%, I believe it was 85% of those children tested positive of 3.3 and above. And the CDC has that threshold of 3.5 lead blood. And 85% of those children that agency tested out of 375 children were above that threshold. That to me was shocking. Now, that's not to say that was all done by lead and water. Of course, they were just testing from kids in the community, but to have that level of children, percentage-wise, testing positive for lead in their blood just is an indicator of the state of emergency that we here in Milwaukee should be sounding a 5-alarm bell on this issue because it's just devastating future generations of our community and the future of our communities that this toxin is so out of control that our government and all our institutions have just decided to treat this as some kind of issue that really isn't of major concern. And I say that because you see the priorities in their budgets. Their budgets are prioritizing skyscrapers and sports arenas and all kinds of Willy Wonka projects all over the cities. And no one is really focusing on removing this toxin from our environment. It's happening not only in Milwaukee, it's happening all over the country. And so that was a statistic that really shocked me. And I can imagine that if they did a district-wide testing of children in MPS schools, I would not be shocked that the levels of blood in those students, of lead in those students' blood would be in high percentages as well. It's just shocking to hear that. And so,
Paul, go ahead, Paul. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say that, what Robert is revealing is the necessity to really flip the script and the narrative from finding lead in the blood to preventing lead getting into our bodies, and that prevention and public health and looking comprehensively at all the sources of lead, including water, and doing things like really educating people about where the sources are and how they can protect themselves. In the water's case, by using a duly certified filters with NSF 42 and 53 certification and a claim to reduce lead. These are things we can do today that will end the exposure. And if we cared about it, if we wanted to be efficient about money spent in the schools, we would do this preventive type of work. That's important so that we don't face another generation or more generations of harm like the harm that was revealed at the assembly.
And I know, Paul, you gotta run. So we thank you as always. But Robert and Dr. Yana, I want to ask you, on the other side, maybe it's time once again to make people aware of the damage that this is doing to children. We haven't talked about it in a while, but people really need to know the impact of what we're talking about. 855-752-4842 is the number. Get the Let Out is on board this morning on the Earl Ingram Show. Paul, we'll see you soon. All right.
Spot on the sun today. It's the same old thing as yesterday. her hands are never cold. She's got Betty Davis eyes, she'll turn her music on you. You won't have to think twice. She's pure as New York snow. She got Betty Davis eyes. And she'll tease you, she'll unease you, all the better just to please you. She's precocious, and she knows just what it takes to make a pro blush. She got
Welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. You can text us at that same number. Once again, this is Get the Let Out with Dr. Yana Lambrinidou of Coalition of, I can't think of it right now. Dr. Lambrinidou, the Coalition for
Campaign for Lead-Free Water.
Campaign for Lead-Free Water.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
No
And Robert Miranda of FLAC. And I asked before, we took this short break, I asked if you guys would talk about the impact of lead in children. I think we haven't had that discussion or conversation in a while. People may be listening for the first time and not even know or understand the impact of why you guys are fighting this scourge.
Yeah, Earl, I mean, what a good question. And it's so important to be reminding ourselves of this, because we just, oftentimes mention lead. Everybody understands there's something bad about it, but really looking at specifically the adverse health effects with which it has been associated, it's kind of staggering, really. Lead exposure is associated with miscarriage, with stillbirth, with premature birth, anemia, hyperactivity, attention deficit, reduced capacity to learn, difficulty succeeding in school, juvenile delinquency, criminal behavior, and then for later adults, kidney damage, cardiovascular problems, reproductive problems, and really damage to every organ in the human body. Lead is has been shown to cause health harm even at low exposure levels, which is why there is no level of lead in blood that is considered safe. It is why EPA has defined set the maximum contaminant level goal for lead in water. This is the goal, health-based goal of zero. Only zero lead in water is safe lead in water. And some of lead's adverse health effects can be irreversible. So the best way to avoid health harm from lead is to prevent exposures from all sources.
Robert?
Exactly. And, I echo what Dr. Yana has just stated. I also want to highlight, the falsehoods that are put out there, like what we heard last week from one of your callers who said, that he has been drinking water from lead pipes and,
nothing's happened to him yet and his family.
Right. Exactly. He's doing just fine and nothing's happened to him. Well, the misconception and the problem with people like that is they think that because people have been exposed to lead, there should be some kind of overt kind of indicator that their health is being impacted. That they're supposed to show to the public that the lead has affected their mental state of mind, that there's supposed to be something that shows that they're supposed to be damaged by lead, and again, this is the kind of mentality and thinking that uneducated, really morons out there that think that just because they're not impacted by it or they don't see that kids are out there are completely acting in a totally mentally deranged state of mind. This is the kind of nonsense that grows, and it comes out of the fact that our government and institutions like the schools do not provide the kind of public education that is needed so people can have the information they need in order to understand the impact of lead in blood and how it affects our health, as Dr. Yana just stated. You know, our children may not be showing those kinds of overt examples of physical harm, but they are hurting. They are harmed. And our schools are good indicators of the fact that they are being impacted. Our streets are good indicators that they are being impacted. You know, there are behaviors out there that people will tend to associate to bad parenting. Well, you know, again, that behavior can be derived from the fact that a lot of our children have been devastated mentally by this toxin that is impacting their brain when they were consuming this and still consuming it through water. In my opinion, water is playing a big part in the damage of our children as they get older, because they are ingesting more water. They are eating food that is cooked with water that is laced with lead, and it is an impact that affects us all in the community. And so we don't have to see somebody acting out in a way that some people like this guy think they should be acting out. The problem is people who have conditions, as Dr. Yana just articulated, that could be a symbol or a symptom of the fact that their blood is laced with lead and they need to address it and take care of it immediately.
You know, Dr. Yana, just for, information's sake, according to the Environmental Protection Agency, Wisconsin has 176,000 lead pipelines, and they affect 111 distinct communities, especially Wisconsin's largest city, Milwaukee, which has 70,000. Now, I think what people fail to understand and the impact of Donald Trump being the president as opposed to Joe Biden and what Joe Biden did, the CARES Act and the American Rescue Plan Act, there was $2.53 billion that that Joe Biden basically put in, over $9 billion that Joe Biden put in place to address some of these issues, man. That could just, Dr. Yana, that could just all disappear and go away.
Yeah, that's right, Earl. That's a risk that we're facing right now. I hope that it's not going to happen. I hope that the funds under the Biden-Harris administration that were allocated for lead service line replacement are going to be used in that way, even under this administration that we have at the moment. As Robert said, and as it sounds like the caller from last week was suggesting, one of the reasons I believe that we have been so slow in addressing this very serious problem is precisely because lead is invisible, and precisely because the harm that it wreaks is not visible either, not concrete. People do not get physically sick unless they are exposed to extremely high levels of lead. But when we're talking about the slightly lower levels, still high in many cases, but slightly lower levels and exposures on a routine basis, the effects are going to show in, difficulty learning in school. When a child has difficulty learning or has aggressive behavioral problems, it is rare that a conversation will happen about what types of lead and exposures this child had in the past. When a pregnant person loses their fetus, it is rare that there's going to be a discussion about what lead levels they've been exposed and whether lead actually contributed to the miscarriage or the stillbirth or the premature birth. So there's a lot of questions that go unanswered. And because of the invisibility of the problem, we have justified not dealing with it in an expedient and urgent fashion.
You know, Dr. Yana and Robert, when we look at what is taking place and what is transpiring, wouldn't you think that automatically very young children who live in rural areas and in urban centers should be tested for lead at very young ages, when they see the doctors early on, first couple times, that this would be something that they would check on, or is it too early for them to find that out?
I think you're exactly right, Earl, that blood lead testing is important and very early on is extremely important, especially for exposures from drinking water, precisely because many newborns are dependent on reconstituted formula that many times is made with tap water.
Right.
Sometimes parents even just draw hot tap water to reconstitute formula, and hot tap water is at increased risk, actually, of containing lead from plumbing. And unfortunately, our national approach to detecting children with elevated blood lead levels presumes that lead paint, soil, and dust are the primary sources in every case. This is a false and simplistic presumption. And because of this presumption, the blood lead testing programs that we have developed and are used across the country begin testing children at around 12 months of age, because that's the time when children begin crawling and they have more hand-to-mouth activity. So the concern there is exposing themselves to lead dust that might be on the floor or lead paint chips. And that's important. That's very important. But we are missing the whole entire first year, where children might be exposed on a daily basis to low and high and astronomical levels of lead in drinking water. All of that window closes. And by the time we test children at 12 months or 2 years, exposures from lead in water that could have been catastrophic are impossible to identify through lead in blood testing.
Robert, McCann Brown's homeless sanctuary, I've spent a lot of time there, and I've watched those children come in, and many of those children come in and be tested. And you just could see, when you look at them, the kind of listlessness that you see in them. And sometimes they're 5, 6 years old. And so, they've lived in places that, aren't safe. Let's talk about that a little bit more, Robert, with you, 855-752-4842. You're tuned into the Earl Ingram Show.
She'll lay you on the throne. She got Betty Davis eyes. She'll take a tumble on you. Roll you like you were dice until you come out blue. She's got Betty Davis eyes. She'll expose you when she snows you. Off your feet with the crumbs she throws you. She's ferocious, and she knows just what it takes to make it pro-blush. All the boys think she's a spy. She's got Betty Davis eyes. I stay out late at night and play my songs. And sometimes all the nights can be so long. And it's good when I finally make it home, all alone, while she lays dreaming. I try to get undressed without the light, and quietly she says, "How was your night?" And I come to her and say, "It was all right," and I hold her tight. And she believes in me. I'll never know just what she sees
To the
in
Earl
me.
Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842.
She was mine.
855-752-4842. Text us at that same number. Get the Let Out Coalition is on tap. No pun intended. Robert, you know, you see those children, man. And every time I see them, man, my heart breaks because the parents bring them there. And the parents are renting places, right? They're renting, and you know, the all they can do is keep a roof over the child's head. They don't really, they're not in a position to be concerned about those kinds of things, Robert. It's so much of a struggle in this society for single mothers with children that they, you know, they don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of issues when we're dealing with families that live in poverty, and on this matter, it's one of the most impactful as it goes to their health. You know, I've dealt with a lot of families in Milwaukee. I've talked with a lot of families and met with families whose children have been lead poisoned. And one of the things that I always notice when I walk in the house or they invite me onto their porch and we talk and they tell me about the poisoning that happened to their child, I look at the child, and one of the things I notice is what I see, and I call myself the urban stare.
Yeah,
it's an
distant.
urban stare.
Right.
And yeah. You know, and it's like, you know, you could tell that this child is suffering from this poison. And, you know, it just one of those things where, you know, you appreciate the work that is being done by community organizations that do the blood lead testing. And that's a good thing that they are doing it. But there's also part of the lead blood testing that people have to understand, and that is that, you know, the lead stays in your blood, and it has about a 30-day threshold before it completely goes away from the blood. So there's a chance that when you get ready to go ahead and test the blood again, maybe in 60 days or so, you might not see it again in the blood. So, you know, the idea here is that even though testing for blood lead levels is a good thing, testing, if it's going to be done, has to be done more consistent, and you can't really catch it all the time if the lead leaves the blood after a 30-day threshold. And so that's why it's very important to really push and focus on the issue of prevention. You know, we've got to find preventive remedies, preventive measures that remove this toxin from the environment completely, remove it from the water systems completely. And it's an easy thing to do. It's not that difficult. It can be done. It just takes policy. It just takes elected officials with courage. It takes people who care to put the money into it and remove these toxins from the environment and invest in the infrastructure of our community.
So Robert, the president last night. So when people say we don't have the money, He's talking about building an Iron Dome over the entire
Right,
United
right.
States. Can you imagine the amount of money? You know,
Yeah,
it's
you know,
just a crazy
it,
thought. And for a fraction of that,
it's goofy. Yeah.
and for a fraction of that, you can prevent children from being lead poisoned, right?
You know, I mean, the goofiness of some of the stuff this guy talks about, you know, and talk about, you know, we want to cut funding, but yet we want to send people to Mars. And you know, we want to populate Mars. You know, I mean, first let's take care of Earth. You know, let's do the things that we need to do in order to deal with the 7 billion people on Earth, the 340 million people in the United States, the 6 million people in Wisconsin, and not worry about putting 1 million people on Mars. Now, how much money that's going to be used to do that is crazy. That the half of that money can be done to clean this mess up in the United States.
Hey, Robert and Dr. Yana, thank you guys as always. Hey, Robert, I got to talk to you later on today, so I'll call you after the show.
All right, thank you, Earl.
Hey,
Take
Dr.
care.
Yana, thank you. Thank you as well. We'll talk next. Okay.
I was on the
Up
radio.
next,
Sorry about that.
Dr. Robert Craig, Executive Director of Citizen Action. We're going to be talking about Donald Trump and his speech last night. I don't even know if you call it a speech. But anyway, 855-752-4842. Up next, Dr. Robert Craig, Executive Director of Citizen Action, and you.
And there's no end while she lays crying. I fumble with a melody or two, and I'm torn between the things that I should do. Then she says to wake her up when I am through. God, her love is true. And she believes in me. I'll never know just what she sees in me. I told her someday, if she was my girl, I could change the world with my little songs. I was wrong, but she has failed.
and budget priorities, nearly half that money would go toward the top 5% of Americans with the most wealth. Republican tax cuts in this plan would cost $4.5 trillion. For Civic Media News, I'm Fiona May.
And that's news on WAUK. I'm Stuart J. Wallace. Hi, I'm Mike Clemens with sports. Let's keep the Hawks 127 to 121. I believe the game. Didn't like about the Bucks defense in the first half. They're just looking at transition early. They made 2-3-3.
All right, we're good to go.
Okay, ready?
Yep.
On the Earl Ingram Show, Dr. Omar makes a return visit. We'll take your calls, questions, and comments. Hour 2, it's your thing. We'll be opening.
Wait. It's not recording. I don't know what happened. All right, let's do it again. Give me 3 seconds. Oh, come on, dude. Let's not do that. All right, good. Go ahead. You're good now. We're good.
On the Earl Ingram Show, Dr. Omar makes a return visit. We'll take your calls, questions, and comments. Hour 2, it's your thing. We'll be opening the phone lines for you to express your thoughts and concerns.
Good. I got Dr. Robert Craig on the line for you.
All right,
Talk to him real
okay.
quick.
No. That's
So, quick question. Did you want me to play his intro right away or after the song?
you can play right away.
Okay.
It's time to get organized with Dr. Craig and Citizen Action. Working for democracy and taking on economic, racial, and environmental issues across Wisconsin and around the United States. Here's Earl Ingram with Dr. Robert Craig.
All right, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. Text us at that same number. And he's back. Dr. Robert Craig, Executive Director of Citizen Action, has joined us as always. It's Wednesday at 9 o'clock. Dr. Craig, good morning to you, sir. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Earl, after that long ordeal last night?
So did you stay up and watch it all?
I have to admit that I dozed off and watched the rest of it on a replay. So, no, I didn't. There's only so much a body can take, as the husband said.
So what I want to do, Dr. Craig, is I'm going to play Bernie Sanders' response right now. It's 4 minutes, and then we'll delve into what took place yesterday. Go ahead, Carti, if you will, please.
Moment in our country's history, facing unprecedented challenges. How we respond to this moment will impact not only our lives, but the lives of our kids and grandchildren, and in terms of climate change, the very health and well-being of the planet. As you heard tonight, President Trump has been very effective in creating what I would call a parallel universe for his supporters. A set of ideas that either have no basis in reality or in the great scheme of things are nowhere near the most important concerns of the American people. And one way that he does that is through the concept of the big lie, and boy, did we hear that tonight. You say something that is grossly false, say it over and over again, and have right-wing social media blasted out endless times until people actually believe it. Now, the purpose of all of this lying is not just to push his hateful right-wing ideology. It is not just to try to divide us up. It is more than that. It is a masterful effort, and you saw that tonight, to deflect attention away from the most important issues facing the people of our country, about the economic reality facing 60% of our people, or the enormous stress that they are living under. 90-minute speech, not one word about the economic reality facing American workers. Trump gave his State of the Union speech tonight. But if you listen closely, that speech had very little to say about the State of the Union, about what is really going on in our country, especially for working families. Trump spoke for over 90 minutes, although I must confess it seemed a lot longer than that, and he almost completely ignored the issues that are keeping working people up at night as they worry about how their families are going to survive in these very tough times. The Trump administration is a government of the billionaire class, by the billionaire class, and for the billionaire class. Notwithstanding some of their rhetoric, this is a government that could care less about ordinary Americans and the working families of our country. And yet, not surprisingly, Trump had nothing to say about climate change except, I guess, drill, baby, drill. Well, that's going to help a whole lot. And let's be clear. Not only did Trump fail to talk about some of the most important issues facing the working class of America, but the solutions, in quote, he proposed would only make a bad situation even worse. Yes, they control our economy and they own much of the media. They have enormous influence over our political system. But from the bottom of my heart, I am convinced that they can be beaten.
Dr. Craig, Bernie Sanders, say what you will, as he's not a Democrat, he's an independent. But his voice is what's needed, right? I mean, who else can deliver it in that manner, Dr. Craig, to push back on what we saw last night? Your thoughts?
Well, I agree with you that Senator Sanders is a great communicator. He's been misunderstood and underestimated because it's not the traditional kind of slick television communication or eloquence, traditional eloquence that we've associated with effectiveness. He is extremely clear. He talks about facts, but in a clear way, and explains them, and he sticks to the main themes over and over again. So he is both very clear in his communication, and he actually attempts, which is the best tradition of our republic, to educate and enlighten the people, not to confuse them. And of course, we saw the opposite, which is what Bernie was talking about, from the Trump address to a joint session of Congress. It was not officially a State of the Union because that happens after your first year. You have to have a year to report on. He has far less than that. Bernie's right also to look at what he doesn't say. Because if you focus entirely on what he says, the amazing number of just complete fabrications and misrepresentations and lies, the strange hatreds and foibles and egotistical lusts. I mean, it's all out there. It's kind of Yeah, it's like you get a lot more of Donald Trump and his psyche than you'd want to have, and it's not a pretty picture. That this is compelling to a lot of other Americans. Of course, it's reinforced, as Bernie said, by repetitive right-wing noise machine over and over and over again, right, in its propagandistic way. But it is concerning that it's appealing to many elites, many corporate leaders who back this, who gave massive monies to Trump, supported his inaugural, are not seeing this as a threat to their profits when it is, because authoritarianism is not profitable. They don't understand, frankly, that it's democracy and the rule of law that's made the accumulation of these great fortunes possible. So Bernie's right. There's no focus at all on the 60% of working Americans who are paycheck to paycheck at all. And he hasn't even followed through. He hasn't really cared to follow through on his promise to lower prices, because that was always just a lie to get power anyway. His real thirst is to gain power, remove all perceived opponents, take revenge, and to clear away anything that gets in the way of him acting like a Putin or a Xi in China. So that's where we are. And Bernie mentioned at the beginning the climate crisis. We worked with Supreme Ormakunde, state rep, and state senator Chris Larson, and a lot of other state senators and reps to introduce a bill that would have Wisconsin take up the slack on the climate crisis, Earl, because we still got a 5-year deadline to cut emissions almost in half, and we're way behind. So that if Trump's going to do the opposite, and we heard that, all he wants to do is have conspiracies about electric vehicles, which are good vehicles, and carry on that way, lie that he's going to protect the environment when he's doing the opposite, which we get into, then it's going to have to be taken up by others, by states like Wisconsin.
Dr. Craig, here's a text message. This loudmouth phony skimmed millions from his 2 presidential campaigns and media commissions. He used to criticize millionaires and billionaires, but now Comrade Bernie is a millionaire. This senile communist bent over for Hillary, then he bent over for Biden. He believes in nothing other than stuffing the pockets of Comrade Bernie. The only reason that I even put that up, Dr. Craig, is there are many other people who believe that foolishness, those lies that Donald Trump told, and they can't even think for themselves. And so this is what they believe. They believe all those lies that Donald Trump told last night. And out of all the things Bernie Sanders said, Dr. Craig, and they were numerous, he didn't mention one thing about the economy. The very thing that they blamed Joe Biden for, and that things were so bad for the American people under Joe Biden. It was so terrible under Joe Biden that Donald Trump was first thing he was going to do was fix it all. And as you stated, and Bernie stated, didn't mention one thing. And then I heard him say, Dr. Craig, to top all of those things off, well, we've certainly increased these tariffs, and the people are going to feel some pain for a little while. What is he talking about? Feel some pain for a little while, Dr. Craig. That's not what he told the people.
We don't know how long these will persist, because he also likes to slap things on and pull them back. He's very, very erratic leadership. But the International Chamber of Commerce said it risks a world depression. Okay, and that's not some progressive source. That's not some sort of Bernie Sanders. By the way, the text messages we saw about Bernie that came across were all smears and just character attacks, really of the smearing variety. They didn't say anything about the substantive critique Sanders made, because that's not what it's about. It's about anyone who disagrees with me is corrupt, is evil. It's a kind of gaslighting, because we talk about facts and issues here, but the tariffs are, no one can, people, including his closest allies, cannot figure out where he's going and are worried. Wall Street's worried. You look at the stock market has become very volatile and is getting towards correction territory the next 2 days. But we don't know exactly what's going to happen. The point is, there's a whole disconnect between what drives him and any empathy or concern, not only for people he's cutting food aid off of, but the actual people that elected him. And Jamal Bowie made a good point. In some ways, he wants to punish the American public because he blames them for humiliating him by voting him out of office in 2020.
Dr. Robert Craig, Citizen Action, is on board. 855-752-4842 on the Earl Ingram Show.
Peace of mind on the floor. Take a little time. Come and see. Go with me. Give a little sign. I'll be there after a while. If you want my love, we can boogie on down. Down. Boogie on down. Down. Boogie on down. Down. We boogie on down. On down. Let's groove tonight. Share the spice of life. Baby, slice of life. We gonna groove tonight. Let's groove. Hey, all right. Oh, you sure have got me, girl. At last, I'm past the fantasy. Into my reality, oh yes you are.
All right, welcome back
Just a love
to Dr. Robert Craig, Executive Director of Citizen Action on the Earl Ingram Show. You know, Dr. Craig, I want to go to the phone lines quickly. Dale from Warsaw. Good morning to you, Dale. You say what? Dale from Warsaw, you there? Dale. Okay. So, Dr. Craig, let me these are some of the New York Times. They didn't flat out call them lies. They just said they lack evidence.
That's very polite, isn't it, Earl?
Yeah, we found billions of dollars of fraud. The response by the New York Times, this lacks evidence. There's a whole lot of information that follows that statement. I don't have time. As you know, we inherited from the last administration an economic catastrophe and an inflation nightmare. Watch New York Times. This is misleading. A whole lot of information after that. I don't have time to read it. Donald Trump again. We will take in trillions and trillions of dollars and create jobs like we have never seen before. Lacks evidence. We ended all of Biden's environmental restrictions that were making our country far less safe and totally unaffordable. And importantly, we ended the last administration's insane electric vehicle mandate, saving our auto workers and companies from economic destruction. Not true. I've stopped all government censorship and brought back free speech in America. Dr. Craig, man, we suffered the worst inflation in 48 years, but perhaps even in the history of our country. As president, I'm fighting every day to reverse this damage and make America affordable again. Joe Biden especially let the price of eggs get out of control, and we're working hard to get it back down. Our goal is to get toxins out of our environment, poisons out of our food supply, and keep our children healthy and strong. And it goes on and on and on, Dr. Craig. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I got up early this morning, and it took me better part of half hour to get to New York Times fact checks. So there are so many falsehoods. So I agree. It goes on and on and on and on. I didn't read them all. Shows me to be a liberal interested in facts. But Earl, the response we would get from people on the other side, unfortunately, which I hope people take a step back and reflect, would be, oh, New York Times is fake news. That is not an adequate response, okay? It just isn't. And we're not going to have a democracy if we can't actually have some shared fact base. Now, do Democrats, do liberals sometimes distort facts or select facts that support their position? Yeah, that's human nature. You work through, that's what sifting and winnowing, the Wisconsin idea, is about. But it's not about just dismissing things this way and saying, oh, that's all fake news. It is objectively false that this was an economy at the level of Herbert Hoover's economy in the Great Depression, but that's the way it's described. Now, you can talk about how much we should value inflation versus the excellent job record versus the growth record versus the context of coming out of the COVID pandemic and all of that. We can have that discussion. And whether it's fair to blame Biden for inflation when it was higher in other countries facing the same thing, especially other advanced industrial countries. But that's for discussion. How do you have a discussion about, oh, I'm going to ignore all that New York Times fact check, throw it aside as fake news and say, oh, I saw on social media, and then some crazy thing made up that people are repeating over again as the way the world works? What does it say about the ideology, about whether anyone should trust these folks, that you can have a conversation about basic facts in the world?
Dr. Craig, all of that information, as you talked about what the New York Times pointed out, I mean, just lie after lie after lie after lie. And then I was listening to conservative talk radio as I do when I drive out here every morning, and they said 68% of America agree with what Donald Trump said. Where did they get those numbers? That's a lie in itself. There's no way 68% of the American people agreed with what was said last night. That would have meant that 68% of the American people voted for Donald Trump. I mean, they don't even give it any thought, Dr. Craig. That's the fear. That's what's so frightening to me, that when we say we're going to try to bring Americans together, Dr. Craig, on this, how can you possibly do it when, as you stated, there are people who won't even read the responses of the New York Times, and they'll go right back to Fox News, or they'll go right back to X or Truth Social and take those things verbatim?
I've got to conclude, Earl, that a lot of folks know this. We should never underestimate people's basic intelligence, and they don't care. In fact, they're fine as long as their side is winning. They're so angry and they're so keyed up. But in many ways, Elon Musk's highly unconstitutional destruction of federal law and the civil servants that run all the major agencies, with special targets to the one that they don't like, that it's the equivalent of getting really mad that your car isn't performing like you'd like it to, and so to have the 19-year-old next door just tear it apart and open up, and they're throwing things around. That doesn't fix it. It means you have to have a car that runs, okay? So as they tear through the Social Security Administration, oh, really? These employees are all irrelevant to the question of whether you're going to get your Social Security check or not? Well, there are a lot of folks in Florida and conservative retirement communities who are so revved up with everything else that they're unwilling to think about that. You can't get even people to think about the consequences. This isn't the way any rational human or society should function. And you saw it last night. I mean, it was all on open display in what that Carnival Act last night.
855-752-4842. Guys, hang on. We'll come right to you. It's Wednesday. That means Dr. Robert Craig, Executive Director of Citizen Action, is on board, and you.
Never had enough. I'm so glad that I was patient. Lord, sent me your heavenly creation. Oh, yes, He did. You're all I needed, yeah. Oh, but so I can see it. Never had a love like this before. I never had a love like this girl before. Never had a love like this before. She treats me so good. Never had a love like this before. Hey, baby, do you understand what I mean? Never. Oops, in your tender touch. Every day asking for too much. No, I'm in love with what you're doing. Never get tired of watching you. Never had a love like this before. Never had a love. Never had a love like this before. Hey girl, you're what I need. Never had a love like this before. Ooh, I never had a love. I've been in a lot of situations, but never like this before. Oh no, there's been so much anticipation. You love's that for sure, and everybody needs it. Everybody's looking for a good situation. Uptown, downtown, all around the world, looking for the right girl, hoping and praying. Oh, some never finding the right boy or the right girl. For the right boy, looking for the right girl. Hear what the fellas are saying. Never had a love like this before. Never had a love like this before. Do you hear what the fellas are saying? Never had a love like this before. Ooh, I never had a love. Never had a love like this before. Like this before. Never had a love like this before. And I'm so happy with it. Never had a love. Never had a love. Never had a love like this before. Ooh, I've never been so sure. Never had a love like this before. Oh, you got the feeling so secure. Never had a love like this before. Oh, I never had a love. Never had a love. Never had a love like I see the crystal raindrops fall, and the beauty of it all is when the sun comes.
All right, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. Text us at that same number. It's Wednesday. That means Wednesdays with the one and only Dr. Robert Craig, Executive Director of Citizen Action. Let's go to Dale, Carti. Dale, you're up.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. See, I have an observation on these tax cuts destroying all different types of agencies in the country to provide tax cuts to the billionaires and the millionaires. I took an average person, maybe making $40,000 a year, and another person that's making $1 million a year. Well, the tax reduction then would be $4,000, an extra 10% for that person making $40,000. For a millionaire, it would be $100,000 reduction. So right there, one person is getting 25 times more reduction in their taxes than another. And then if you go up to someone making $10 million a year, now they're getting 250 times the reduction of this other person that's making $40,000. Then we take it up to someone like the millionaires, the billionaires, someone that's making $100 million a year compared to this person that's making $4,000 a year. Now it's 2,500 times. One person is getting 2,500 times more dollar reduction in their taxes than another, and that's where the problem lies. Destroy all these agencies, Medicare, Social Security, whatever they can, to give one person 2,500 more dollar reduction in their taxes than another, and then of course that multiplication factor exponentially goes up when it's $1 billion or $100 million.
Dale, I wish I had more time, but thank you for doing that research and pointing that out. Dr. Craig, you want to respond to Dale?
Well, that's right. That Dale just gave you a very granular analysis of what regressive tax cuts look like. And that's the kind of tax cuts that Trump and his Republican allies have proposed. It's what they always propose here in Wisconsin, Robin Vos and the legislative majorities. And their idea is that that the opposite of what the tax code, how it was set up in the progressive era, the Robert Follett era. The idea then was to tax people who are doing the best, the most, and to try to redistribute some of the inequality in our economic system to people, to middle-class people and working-class people. And it did that for a long time, but it's been chipped away at since Reagan, and it's getting worse and worse. And he's right. They want to make massive cuts to things like Medicaid, which provides health care to a fifth of the people in this country, and a lot more of our children than that. And cuts to food assistance, all sorts of things, but they still won't pay for the $4.5 trillion in tax cuts. They're still going to run up the deficit for this. And I'll summarize it this way, Earl. In that absolutely embarrassing performance, the Sean Hannity show, like shaming of Vladimir Zelensky on Friday, Trump just kept saying to him when he made the case for what had actually happened and what would happen if they agreed to a peace without security guarantees, you don't have 8 cards. Well, that's what Trump and his allies are telling the American people. We're going to give all the money to Elon Musk and billionaires because you all average people don't have 8 cards. That's his morality. That's how he sees the world.
Dr. Craig, that is very profound, man. It was a great response. Let's go to CJ. Good morning to you, CJ. You say what?
Good morning to you, Earl and Dr. Craig. You know, watching last night, it's hard to believe we're only 6 weeks into this presidency. It's amazing.
What's amazing? Hey, CJ, what's amazing? Because a lot of us think it's amazing too about just how much damage he's getting ready to do to the very people who elected him.
You maybe think so, I don't, but your party's so miserable they couldn't even stand for a 13-year-old cancer survivor. Your party
hey, CJ, let me tell you something. They can use those props because that's what they did. Absolutely. They brought that poor person up to make them out of a prop. Okay?
Oh,
that's exactly what they did.
A prop, huh?
Yes.
He's a prop. Very classy of you, Earl. He's a prop.
That's exactly what they used him as.
Talking that way. You keep people like you, that's what you always refer to me, and people like you are so miserable you can't find it in your heart to stand for a 13-year-old boy surviving cancer. That's your part.
Hey, CJ, let me ask you this. So why did Donald Trump bring that poor 13-year-old boy up in front of the world? What was his purpose?
I want you to rewatch.
No. I don't want you to cut him off. Cut him off. I don't want to rewatch any tape. You couldn't give me an answer why they brought him up. I know why they brought him up. Dr. Craig, you know why they brought him up. Okay. Let's go to Brendan from New Jersey. Go ahead, Dr. Craig.
Let me just say, Earl, you weren't casting aspersions on the 13-year-old young man. You were talking about the way he was being used. Both could be true. He was sympathetic. Donald Trump wasn't doing it for empathy. If he really cared about cancer victims, he wouldn't be gutting the National Institute of Health and all the research and all the major research universities and institutions and medical and academic medical colleges in the country that do the research to address cancer. So it's completely misleading and false. And you see how CJ found some slight that was about character, and then that's all that happened. What happens is that crowds out the reality. It's, in fact, CJ, I'll give you credit. That was very much the way Donald Trump takes attention away from what's really going on and people's real interests, because the real thing we should care about is who's going to address chronic diseases and acute diseases and make sure everyone has health care when they need it. It's a right. It ain't Donald Trump. He's doing the opposite, and that's the important thing. But what CJ brought up, it tries to create a completely false impression by focusing in narrowly in that way. And by the way, I'm sorry, the Republicans, that side of the aisle, Donald Trump, they act with no grace in these situations in the least. So quite the high horse to stand on, given what was standing on the big stage there last
year. You know, Dr. Craig, CJ can make that moronic statement. If what Donald Trump was doing and what he was really trying to do was to bring a point of we need to be concerned about these people, he wouldn't be cutting Medicaid. Come on. Let's go to Brendan. Good morning to you, Brendan. How you doing, man?
Oh, my God. CJ is such a phony butthead. I'm sorry. He's just so phony. That knucklehead that was sitting there giving that speech, he's dragging the same year-old kid to a detention camp somewhere in this country right now, regardless of what his health situation is, regardless of what's going on with him, and sticking him in a detention camp, and they're going to send him probably back to a country where his parents will be killed by drug lords or something else. So, hey, CJ, spare us all your BS, okay? Secondly, just go through the fact check. Oh, my goodness. The guy lied so many times, he can't open his mouth without some dog turd falling out of it, okay? And then to put this poor young boy up there, and gee, funny, he wasn't white, he was black. Wonder why he did that. You think he even went up and met the kid? You think he even shook the kid's hand? And then to talk about kicking the green out from Texas where I know where I'm up against it here, kicking Green out of the room, Texas. Did anybody kick the other Green out when she was calling President Biden a liar and wearing a Trump MAGA hat when she came into there, which is, by the way, against their rules? Okay. And I'm sorry, but I've never seen so many spineless, communist-leaning, right-wing pieces of garbage in one room in all my life. They couldn't smile hard enough when the camera was on them and they were standing up.
Hey, Brendan, tell us how you really feel. Thank you very much for the call. I wish I had more time. Let's go to Brian from Milwaukee. Good morning to you, Brian. You say what?
Hey, good morning. Yeah, I looked at the fact check. CBS did a really nice fact check on CBS News on their website last night. And yeah, it's just lie after lie. And what really got me was when Trump made the comment about, all these people, but over the ages of 115.
Yeah.
That are, it's like, where are you getting these numbers from, dude? Because I'm sorry, they're probably rolling in their grave collecting their paychecks. But the other thing that really got me was when Trump said, well, what's it going to get for you Democrats to stand up? What do I have to do? Come up with some, vaccine to cure some disease in the world? How are you going to do that when you're gutting everything? I mean, you're cutting benefits, and aid to countries where there's, disease like AIDS going around. And now you're talking about coming out with some world cure? What's like that's...
Hey, Brian.
You know what I mean?
Hey, Brian, thank you very much for the call, man. I agree totally. Let's go to Ollie from Northwoods. Good morning to you, Ollie. You say what?
Good morning. When I saw the Trump and the little boy last night, or heard it, I listened to it on the radio. I thought the same thing. How dare he use that boy? Because look what he's doing to the
Medicaid.
Medicaid, Medicare, Medicaid, and also the cancer program, research programs at the schools here in Wisconsin, and also he's basically trying to close down the EPA. Well, he said that boy got some kind of chemical. That was what was the issue with him in the first place, why he caught cancer. And so he's going to do away with the EPA that keeps control of environmental pollution. So, and then to use the other young man too, and give him that way to go to West Point. Well, he was the one who made such a hoo-ha about Biden trying to do college forgiveness.
Hey, Ollie, I wish I had more time. Thank you very much for the call. But CJ, I would say this to you. You say that I was being, how dare I say this? You're talking to a guy who took in a 100% disabled child 21 years ago and who requires 24-hour care and is still raising that adult man who's 23 who requires 24-hour care. I think talk is cheap, CJ. And what Donald Trump did was cheap. Okay? If he really was concerned about that young man, with all the money Donald Trump has, he could make a difference in the lives of people who are disabled, CJ. You don't understand it. Okay? Talk is cheap. And you ought to know it. You're pretty good at it. 855-752-4842. Dr. Robert Craig, hang on. Phone lines. We'll come right back to you. You're tuned into the Earl Ingram Show.
You and I. I hear the crystal raindrops fall on the window down the hall, and it becomes the morning dew. And darling, when the morning comes and I see the morning sun, I want to be the one with you, just the two of us. We can make it if we try, just the two of us. Just the two of us. Just the two of us. Building big castles way on high, just the two of us, you and I. Just the two of us. Just the two of us. Let's get it together, baby. Just the two of us. Just the two of us. He's the greatest dancer on the planet that I've ever seen. On the planet. He's the greatest dancer on the planet.
One night in the disco on the outskirts of Frisco, I was cruising with my favorite gang. The place was so
all right, welcome
filled
back
with
to the Earl Ingram Show. As
Dallas
always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. Text us at that same number. Dr. Robert Craig, Executive Director of Citizen Action, is on board. Dr. Craig, let's go to Tom from L.A., and then we'll come back to you. Tom, you say what?
Yeah, good morning, Earl. First off, I want to thank you very, very much for playing that Bernie Sanders response last night. And I hope all the listeners will get on YouTube and make that thing go viral, since our regular media will never cover it. Also, remember, if the Republicans are spewing it, they're doing it. And last, I want to say, I'm going to try to focus on what Bernie talked about, which was every time Trump talked, it was a lie. And I'm not going to try to fight these lies with the other side because it doesn't pay. It's just fighting food fight back and forth. But what I would say is we need to focus on Medicare for all. We need to focus on taxing the rich. We need to focus and run our own shadow government rather than playing into Donald Trump's games that he plays. And please, I hope everyone goes and watches on Amazon Prime, The Roosevelts, so you can see what a real president was in Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Republican Teddy Roosevelt, who actually did what was good for the country. Thank you.
Hey, Tom, thank you very much for the call. You know, Dr. Craig, I'm so worried that, you know, as you try with your organization and others, people are starting to realize, people in rural areas who voted for him, that he's, you know, he just is not going to deliver on what he said he was going to deliver. He's going to cause them more pain than they could have ever imagined. Dr. Craig, and then you see responses by people who are on the other side of this. How do we then, Dr. Craig, heal this? I know there's no easy answer, right? And I saw the Democrats, Dr. Craig, the answer is not holding up signs. It's not wearing pink, right? I mean, where's our leadership, Dr. Craig?
Our leadership seems divided. There are people like Bernie Sanders. Senator Chris Murphy has really stepped up a lot, for example. Right. And there are others, and he used to be much more of a moderate bipartisan guy, but he's seen what's going on. That understanding that this situation requires a different kind of leadership. But there are some Democratic leaders that want to pretend it's 20 years ago and they should just proceed through regular process. And so apparently there was a lot of Democratic leadership attempt to suppress protests from their own caucus yesterday. So that's partly where the kind of in-between ground some of them found with the pink and the little placards came from. Look, this is about people getting involved. I think disinformation only works when good information leaves the field. And when people leave the field and people's basic information is through completely taken over mediums like social media that are just full because of the algorithms, and now because the tech billionaires actually want to promote it, just shoveling stuff, things that are agitating and exciting that get people all revved up and are not related to the world as it is. In fact, push the other direction. And so, I mean, we had first, the big fight is going to be, he still has to pass a budget. He has to pass those horrendous $4.5 trillion in regressive tax cuts that one of your callers went through, how unfair they are. And we have a lot of Republicans, including the House Speaker, including Republican swing districts like Derek Van Orden in Wisconsin's 3rd Congressional District, claiming they're not going to cut Medicaid when the budget instructions create no other alternative, the framework they just all voted on 2 weeks ago. So they're going to have to take that vote ultimately, and that's where we can defeat Trump's entire budget. In fact, it's going to get worse than that. They got to keep the government open on March 14th, and they don't have the votes. And Democrats are saying, including the budget ranking member of the budget committee for the Democrats, Congressman Boyle from Pennsylvania, that Brendan Boyle, is that, you know, why we pass a budget that spends money on things when Trump can just ignore all the instructions, right? So we need a return to normal constitutional order where we know what we vote on will actually happen. And so, of course, the Republicans will be in a tight spot then. They can't do that. That's fronting Donald Trump and Elon Musk. And they don't have the votes themselves because they have a wing of their caucus that will vote for nothing constructive, the alleged Freedom Caucus. So we have to rebuild. People have to get involved in that. There's real resistance building to the Medicaid cuts. But in addition, just getting people involved. We had a lobby day yesterday at CIS National Wisconsin, the organization I lead, and we're trying to do different days of action. It wasn't the only one big lobby day we'll do, but our members who came from all over the state were energized just by the ability to feel like they'd influence and be in rooms with state legislators, including Republicans, and make their case and be involved in the press conference we did to release a climate bill. So people need to get involved and understand that they have the power if they will get involved and work together. We got to reclaim that power.
So, Dr. Craig, boots on the ground is the answer to this.
The only solution to the problems with democracy is, democracy, a deeper, more active democracy.
All right, Dr. Craig, thank you as always. Great. We'll see you in a week. Thank everybody who made the show go. Sorry we couldn't get to you on the phone lines. Thank you, Carti, as always. Up next, Jane Matnet, Greg Bach, Matner on air. We'll be back on tomorrow.
Where he can still believe there's a place in her life someday, somewhere. apology. Anybody else would surely know